Hi, I'm Ruben with the Leadership Empowerment Team at SEIU 2015. In this video, we'll take a closer look at Zoom for Members, an organizer's guide to moving members onto Zoom. Now, I don't have to tell you that at 2015, our members are incredibly talented experts in what they do. Yet some of them still struggle when it comes to using modern communications technology like Zoom. To help you guide those members over this hurdle, we've created this useful resource guide and companion video to help you manage that process more successfully so that you and the members you work with are able to stay connected in spite of the many reasons that conspire to keep us apart today. So let's jump in and take a closer look. So the guide begins with a brief introduction and the table of contents to help you more easily find what you're looking for. The first section zeroes in on the number one reason why many organizers are hesitant about moving members onto Zoom. It's that nagging little voice that lives inside all of our heads that asks things like, how can I help members get on Zoom when I barely know how to use it myself? Although that little voice isn't being very helpful, it's actually true. If you feel more confident about the information you have to share with the members, you'll be able to better teach them and prepare them for what you need them to learn, which is why this section is titled Become a Zoom Master. The good news is that Zoom is actually pretty simple to learn. So becoming a Zoom master can be accomplished in very little time and with less effort than you might think. In the guide, we don't go into lots of drawn out step by step instructions to follow. Instead, the guide directs you to 6 short videos, all of which can be viewed in less than 20 minutes, and will teach you how to schedule and host meetings, how to use all of Zoom's basic functions, and everything else you need to understand in order to get members using Zoom. And if after watching those tutorials you're left wanting to learn more, we've curated a few bonus tutorials that'll ensure you know everything you need to know. You'll find those bonus videos on the resources page on the Leadership Empowerment website. For some of you, watching these video tutorials may be all you need to feel like you've got this. But if you're like me, just watching tutorial videos isn't enough. When I was learning to use Zoom, I had to get in there and play with it so that I knew exactly how those lessons in the videos translated to the real thing. So if you're like me, go for it. And when I say play with Zoom, I'm serious. Get in there and play because there really isn't anything you can do to break Zoom or screw up your account. If you change the settings, you can always go back and reset them to the default. If you start a meeting, delete it when you're done. And the best way to get the most out of your playtime on Zoom is to invite a friend or two to a meeting in which you and your friends can try everything out just to see what happens. The next section is sorting members. And this is exactly what it sounds like. It's time to sort your members into different categories based on how much guidance you think they'll need in order to get on Zoom. Well, like any other meeting, the first thing you need to do is create your guest list, right? So once you've done that, take that list and go through it and sort each person into one of 3 categories. Category 1 is for those members that you believe will adapt easily without any issues. Category 2 is for those folks who will probably need a little guidance, not much, but some. And then category 3 is for everyone else. Folks in this category may need help with technology, but they may also need help with overcoming their own personal roadblocks. Now that you have a clear picture of how and where you'll need to focus your energy, it's time to develop an action plan. The next section is for those members whom you believe will struggle. We call this section creating intrigue because that's the secret to turning those members around. If we can present the idea of them learning how to use Zoom as something that intrigues them, they'll be more willing to do what they must do to get online. So let's start with our invitation. Now, most organizers who have Zoom meetings will typically just send out an email inviting their members to attend. And while that might be fine for some members, others might respond by questioning why they have to do that or expressing obstacles, or worse, some members will go silent and they won't even attend the meeting at all. The solution is to manage those situations before they even happen. To do that, let's take a moment to consider why some members respond as they do. For some, the issue is clearly technical. They either don't have a computer or they do, but they don't know how to use it. These are actually the easier challenges to address because these issues can be resolved by helping guide them to finding or borrowing the equipment they don't have, or holding a quick learning session to show them how to do what you'll need them to do. But for a few members, the issue might be more personal. Maybe your member is someone who resists change, or maybe the mere thought of using technology sparks anxiety. The key is to try to identify what that is so that you can work with them to guide them in the direction that you need them to go. Sadly, there's little to nothing we can do to help our members deal with those personal obstacles. But if we can learn where the member is coming from, we can then adapt our approach and meet them where they are at. And that brings us back to the idea of creating intrigue. To explain this concept, how would you feel if someone at work came to you and said something like, "Hey, I need you to learn Zoom. I know you've never used it before, but we're doing our next meeting on it." Chances are you might feel a little anxious and maybe even upset by what this person has just dumped on you. Now, what if that person came to you and they said, "Hey, I found this great new online tool called Zoom that would allow us to see one another and feel more connected to one another. Would you be up to checking it out with me?" How would you feel about it this time? Well, the first version sets the stage for us to have a reaction, and often that comes out as a negative reaction. The second version sets us up to have a response, to engage, to interact. The first version can feel like an ultimatum. No one likes ultimatums. The second version suggests enthusiasm, partnership. Let's check it out together. It makes it feel like this is something we're going to do as a team. So, creating intrigue talks about how we can communicate with the members in a way that excites them about learning this new skill and avoids sparking their fears and challenges. So, make sure you give this section a good read. I guarantee it will help you plan your approach and connect with your members. In the next section, we take a look at assessing their comfort and equipment. The next step is to decipher their relationship with the necessary technology. And to do this, we need to follow the same principles as in the previous section. Not everyone connects with technology in the same way. For some people, the mere mention of technology can trigger all kinds of negative personal responses. But to help them, we need to find out what equipment they do or don't have and whether or not they're comfortable using it. In the guide, you'll find a list of the different types of information that you can gather from a member in order to help you make your assessment. As I mentioned before, for some members, you can just ask them these questions outright. But for others, you might need to get more creative. For some people, admitting they don't know how to do something can spark insecurities or feelings of being judged. Keeping a lookout for these types of reactions can help you to avoid even bigger landmines down the road. The key is to look for any reactions that suggest your efforts would be better rewarded by adjusting your approach. If a member goes silent, you probably want to pull back and reassess your approach. Silence means the person is shutting down. Once they've done that, anything else that you say to them just gets piled on top of that first thing which caused them to shut down in the first place. So, as soon as you realize that the member is shutting down, stop speaking and step back. The last thing you want to do is overwhelm them. In many cases, taking a day or two to reflect and assess why the member might have reacted as they did can help you come up with a new approach. Something that's worked for me has been to call the person back the next day and apologize. By acknowledging their reaction, apologizing for having caused them to feel that way, and then affirming my desire to preserve the relationship that we've worked so hard to build, usually sets the stage for the other person to feel safe enough to finally express the things that caused them to shut down in the first place. Now, if the member isn't the silent type, then there are a couple other types of reactions that you might anticipate. Now, before I go any further, I think it's important to state clearly that we aren't looking at these behaviors as a way of judging anyone. These reactions are actually very common. The reason I think it's important to talk about these behaviors is so that we as leaders are better able to understand what the members may be going through. so that we can more easily meet them where they're at and design personalized ways of communicating with them that allow us to achieve more authentic connections with the members. So, having made that clear, let's go back to the two types of behaviors that we might see. Some folks will respond by using any and every excuse that they can think of to avoid committing to something they aren't sure about. Now, this type of reaction is extremely common, and I'm guessing you've probably encountered people who react to things like this. The second type of reaction is the individual who won't even let you finish speaking before they react with a single shot that's intended to shut down the whole conversation for good. In both of these types of reactions, the person is attempting to achieve the same thing. They're trying to negotiate the situation to go away. Whether someone is making excuses or snapping back at you, both are having a negative reaction. For example, you might be explaining to them how Zoom will allow everyone to see one another and to reconnect with one another. And their response is to say, no, 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 I don't know how to use computers. I've tried, I can't figure them out. There's no way you're going to get me on Zoom. Clearly, this person is trying to shut the whole thing down. The key to handling these situations is to let the member believe that their deflection worked. But once you've accomplished that, you should keep trying by changing your approach to something that they don't anticipate. For example, I might say something like, I totally get that. Computers just don't work for everyone, and that's okay. So let me ask you this. What kind of phone do you have? Do you have an iPhone, an Android? Hopefully, they'll have one of those too. Then I'll continue. So, you know how to use apps on your phone by tapping and clicking and all that stuff, right? Hopefully, they'll say yes. And then I'll close it out by saying, hey, that's great because Zoom has a phone app. And it's even easier to join a Zoom meeting on your phone than it is on a computer. So, in this example, you can see I didn't try to reason with them or change their mind about what they believe is their truth. Instead, I offered understanding and compassion and acknowledged that they aren't alone in how they feel. But then I stopped and redirected my approach. By finding out what type of phone they had, that let me know what kind of skill set they had, and then I can move in with the secondary approach. So, as important as it is to make a good assessment of the equipment and ability that your member has, we have to make that assessment in an empowering way that comes from a place of wanting to meet them where they're at and setting them up to be as successful as possible. The next couple of sections in the guide focus on the technical side of setting up and conducting a Zoom meeting. This stuff is pretty straightforward, so reading through it should provide all you need to feel grounded and confident in how to ensure your meeting goes well. One element in this section that I'd like to shine a light on is the questionnaire on page 6. It's a simple tool that asks you to answer all the basic things that you'll need to know about your meeting. It shouldn't take more than a minute or two to answer all of these questions, so I encourage you not to skip over this simple tool. It'll make your work a lot easier down the line. As you read through the next few pages, be sure to check out the notes and the tips to ensure you reap the benefits that Zoom has to offer, especially the ones that we've figured out the hard way for you. So your meeting is scheduled, members have been invited, your program is all planned out, and you've given the members all the help and support they need to join and take part in the meeting. The sections titled Getting Them Grounded and Pre-Meeting Setup have lots of valuable information that'll help everyone start on the right foot. If your meeting includes language interpreters, these sections include how to get everyone connected to the right audio tracks and keep them connected throughout the meeting. The section Starting the Meeting starts on page 13 and identifies the various Zoom functions that you'll want to review with the participants to ensure everyone knows how to get around in Zoom. These include things like how to mute and unmute themselves, how to turn their cameras on or off, how to select their preferred language, how to rename themselves, among other things. It's also important to think about how a facilitator gives instructions in an online meeting. I once observed a facilitator who told a meeting full of first time Zoom users that they were going to take a poll and that they were going to cast their votes using the yes or no voting buttons. Okay, The facilitator then read out the poll question and then instructed everyone to, quote, open the participants tab and vote either yes or no, end quote. Now, for someone who doesn't know anything about the Zoom interface, that might not be enough. Sadly, none of the participants asked any clarifying questions, but between the confused looks on people's faces and the fact that only about a quarter of the participants actually voted, watching this situation unfold taught me just how important it is to give clear and concise instructions when you're facilitating on Zoom. This is another example of how understanding the members' challenges and taking a little extra time to anticipate the role that they need us to play in order to meet them where they're at ensures that we are doing all we can to set the members up to be successful. Another important tip to remember, by default, when a facilitator shares their screen, their black toolbar at the bottom of the screen and other functions of Zoom are kept hidden. That makes sense if we're showing a video or reviewing a document, but if we're instructing participants on how Zoom functions, it's helpful if the participants can see those items as well. Whether or not those components remain hidden or are visible is determined by making a few tweaks in the settings. So on page 14, you'll find a link to a YouTube video that shows you how to make those settings adjustments should you choose to do so. In the next section called Member Friendly Program, you'll find some leadership empowerment best practices, which are things that we have learned after presenting dozens of online meetings and learning from our own mistakes to establish standards and practices that ensure our meetings go as well as possible. Throughout the rest of the guide, you'll find more valuable tidbits that'll help you plan the best and most engaging meetings possible. There's lots of great information in this section, so don't skip it if you want the members to walk away from your meeting feeling productive and empowered. Finally, in the back of the guide, you'll find a couple of bonus sections which provide you step by step instructions like updating your Zoom account settings and everything you need to know about using and connecting language interpreters. I hope this resource guide and video have helped you to feel more confident and comfortable about transitioning the members onto Zoom. But I hope that you have also learned that the biggest obstacle of getting the members on Zoom isn't technical, it's personal. And the way to overcome these challenges is by providing the members with strong, supportive, and compassionate leadership. The last thing I'd like to share before I go is to remind you that the Leadership Empowerment Team is here to help and support you in your efforts to serve the members. We've created this resource guide and video to help empower you as a leader. Now, if after utilizing the guide and implementing the things we've shared with you, if you still have questions or need additional support, don't forget that the Leadership Empowerment Team offers Facilitator Lab appointments each week. These are appointments where you'll be able to connect with one of us and get answers to all of your questions and figure out any issues that you're encountering. To make a Facilitators Lab appointment, visit us at empowerment.seiu2015.org. Once you're logged in, go to the programs page and click on the Facilitators Lab course. Everything's pretty clear from there. Thanks again, and thank you for allowing us to help support your growth and empowerment as a member of the SEIU 2015 family.